Welcome back to Morning Express. It's time for us to look at the dailies. The time now is 26 minutes to 7. Glad that you're here with us this morning. Well, joining me to look at the dailies this morning is Geoffrey Sore, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Karibu sana.
Asante.
And we'll, look through the dailies.
Yeah.
And starting off with the Standard, where we have Uhuru Raila step in to unlock stalemate. And this, of course, is to do with the IEBC. And it looks like the two leaders of the different sides of the divide are basically coming in to step in to see how they can get a resolve.
Exactly. And it's very interesting that when these two guys come and marshal their troops, some steps seem to be taken. It's interesting, even the entire process of the IEBC, you look at it, it's actually being worked outside the scope of the law. However, you can see us making progress. So it's interesting. On the one side, we are gaining politically in terms of now IEBC being reconstituted and looking at 2017 election. But on the other hand, we ask ourselves, what precedent are we creating? Why are we reforming IEBC apart from the law?
Apart from the law.
Yes.
And, well, let's just look at all the dailies and see what the headlines is before we go into the nitty-gritties of what they have. On the Daily Nation, we have MP strike deal in talks to pick new IEBC team. Again, I guess it's the same story.
Same story.
We have IEBC limits. This is an interesting one. Spend by presidential aspirants to 5.2 billion. And of course, this has been a debate that has been going on in regards to how much should be spent. And finally, we have the Business Daily with banks offer small business cheap loans in quest to stop rate caps. Again, that's another issue that has been raising dust in certain quarters. But let's now just go into the details. And you're mentioning that with the IEBC, it looks like if the two principals come in, then steps are being made in that, in terms of their compromises here and there.
Yes, that's the point I'm trying to make. That they come and then they decide, okay, let's give away this, let's do this, and let's move forward in this particular direction. Hardly do you hear them mentioning now the law, like the constitution on how the IEBC can be reformed, how those things can be done, the relevant statutes and everything. But as I had pointed out earlier, it politically and to the public, we can see some gain because now Kenyans are gaining some confidence that both CORD supporters and Jubilee supporters are thinking if our leaders have agreed on this mode, then let's go with it.
Let's go ahead with it. But does that necessarily mean that it's outside of the law? Exactly.
Because the constitution is so clear and the statutory, they are very clear on how this body should be constituted. Right now, we are going there and they are proposing different things. They are saying, for example, CORD is saying we let the political side, the civil society and the religious groups pick the commissioners directly and put them there. On the other hand, the Jubilee side is saying, let us come up with a selection panel that will now get into the IEBC. And you see, what you may be looking at is like, what are we doing to the commission? Are we filling it with political appointments? Are we sending there people who will be holding our interests as CORD or our interests as Jubilee? Or what kind of body do we want? Do we want an independent body or a body where both interests are represented? And you also agree with me now, it's basically Jubilee and CORD who are negotiating this process as if everything will be political.
Absolutely. Well, let's wait and see what happens because, well, there was a debate yesterday to the effect that should IEBC not be prepared by August 2017, then maybe we can have a transitional body that can actually oversee the election. But again, is that within the law?
I do not think it's within the law. There's no provision for such a thing. But because we have seen the political class coming up with ideas and strategies to do their stuff, it may just be possible. They may just agree. As long as Jubilee and CORD agree, we just follow.
Which would be a very dangerous way to go, because then what if they agree on something that is not to the benefit of Wanjiko or Anyango? What happens?
What happens? That's the question that you need to be asking.
All right, let's look at page 3. And betting firm plans to nurture sports talent. Again, this has been another craze that Kenya seems to be taking up. This is page 3 of the Standard, and they did come to Standard Group yesterday. And, well, what they are saying is that one of the things they want to do with the proceeds that are coming from that money is to nurture talent and to basically give back to the sport.
I think that's a good thing. One of the areas that may have been neglected in our education system is actually nurturing of talent. And if these betting companies can go back to the grassroots, sponsor academies so that young talents can be nurtured from an early age, I think that will be good. I know of so many people who learned of rugby in high schools.
Right.
Or
they
much
didn't
after,
know it existed,
they didn't know it existed, and they became so good. So it means if they were exposed earlier, that will be a great thing. So I think this is a
Of
step
course,
forward.
the downside of it is that we've had some people auction literally their lives for a bet. But then again, there are good sides and bad sides of everything. So it's really just trying to glean the good and try and deal with the bad at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think our legislature also needs to come in with that thing of regulation and just looking what needs to be done, what needs to be put in place for betting farms and how much. Because, for instance, when a betting farm ships 6 billion from our economy, to me that's a concern. And then also just looking at people's perception of wealth. They look at it as you can get these millions very fast. Then the issue of work and business and everything just gets out.
The ethics of it just goes out of the door. And I remember, reading an article where they were saying that statistics actually prove that majority of the people who've won a windfall in a lottery end up worse off years down the road. And I guess that's because they're financially not informed and they don't know what to do with the money. It also reminds me of a story that was in the papers the other day of a gentleman who was paid, I believe it was about 7 million. Although it was not a bet, he basically was paid off with the SGR project that's going on. But today he's literally living like a pauper.
Exactly, because they are what we could call financially literate. So once they get the money, they can't invest it, they blow it, or they expect another time when they will also make a kill, as they call it.
All right, and maybe even put part of the investment back into betting, hoping to win again. Yet the chances, and they say the chances of winning a bet are actually as high as you being hit by lightning twice. So you know how slim those chances are. On to page 5. Sossion demands fair rise for teachers in October deal. Another area that has always been a rocking boat between the government and the teachers. So there we go. In October, they're expecting a pay rise again.
Actually, as long as I've been around, there have always been issues between NAT and the government. And you see, what the teachers of this country need to do, they need just to stand as teachers and make demands. What confuses the country sometimes, there are this political affiliation, this happens, then they go silent, then the issue comes again and again. But I also believe this should be a collective bargaining agreement and not demand. Because the word is bargaining, and I don't think in bargaining you make demands.
Yeah, there needs to be a sit down and have a conversation around it, and some compromises here and there, give and take, and hopefully we have a deal at the end of the day.
Yeah, but also just to give him the benefit of doubt also, this sometimes is also political in trade unionism, and that's sometimes what people want to hear. But in essence, they are actually inviting the government to negotiations. And talking about looking at it politically, we've had quite a number of union leaders end up in politics. So sometimes it's a good ground, in quotes, for them to prepare themselves for the political arena. Exactly. Like I can tell you, Sossion, if he runs there,
he has quite
a number of following. I believe so.
All right, an interesting article on page 12. And this is to do with politics in the northern region. And apparently elders kick out leaders in power sharing deal. And these are elders in the region who said, or rather, who were dictating who is qualified and who is not qualified to run for election come 2017, page 12.
Page 12. I've looked at this story. It's an interesting one. Because I think in that part of the country, there are sometimes clan issues. They are wondering, this clan is leading, next time it should be this other one. But the question that goes to the ground, what do we mean when we talk about democracy? people choosing whom they want.
Whom they want.
However time. That's why discussions of age, tribe, and everything, they really raise issues if we really believe in democracy as we have embraced it, or do we need to modify it? But if these elders have looked at there and it's possible, maybe clan issues will come because one clan is feeling these ones are ruling over us. Maybe it may be a good move politically, but I think it's a blow to democracy.
And, well, they are calling it negotiated democracy. And the likes of Bill Okero, the senator, basically says that he will respect what the elders have said, and he will not run in 2017. However, we have the governor, Ali Roba, saying that for him is not going to go down well. Come 2017, he'll still go for the seat.
Exactly, because also we are wondering, who is this negotiating? Are they the people, or are the elders?
And who do they speak on behalf of?
Of behalf of, that should be the question.
That, of course, should be a question that can be answered. But again, it's interesting to see that elders wielding so much power to a point where they can actually who will run and who will not. And at the end of the day, some actually cede and say, look, I will respect what the elders have to say.
I think it's a good thing. The place of elders, like we had in traditional African societies, they were respected. And whatever they said was like the law, because they were speaking with wisdom. In the current, sometimes we have seen laws being inaugurated as Kikuyu elders. We've seen just across the board. To me, politics has entered into that political system. But
well, let's wait and see. Come 2017, maybe there'll be a change of heart. But if they respect that, well, I'll be surprised, I must say.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's move on now to the Daily Nation, where we have the headlines: MP strike deal in talks to pick new IEBC team. Again, this is, well, the negotiations that have been going on, and it looks like there may be light at the end of the tunnel. But we'll wait and see how that's going to go. Also on the front page, we have doping. The man held for 28 more days, and this is one of the Athletics Kenya managers who was arrested and brought back home from Rio, and this was on accusation of him demanding bribes of 10,000 pounds, that's about 1.3 million Kenyan shillings, basically for him to forewarn the coaches, the British coaches, if there was doping to be done. I mean, doping tests.
Yeah, I was ashamed when I saw this in this piece. And one of my friends who comes out of the country just called me and told me, see, you Kenyans, you have now exported corruption to Brazil. Even it just being an allegation, it just taints our image.
Damages
and
our
damages completely.
And of course, we know that we've had issues in the last few months of doping and whether we comply to WADA rules, and there has been that concern. So that, of course, again throws us back into the doldrums of wondering, are we really clear as we think we are?
Yeah, and I think we need to defend our image as powerhouse in athletics.
Right.
Yeah, so these issues of doping really need to be looked into, and the government needs to.
You know, the thing is, as Kenya, we have always been known for our athletics and doing it clean. We've never had a record of, doping, but there just seems to be things coming up, which would be very sad. It would ruin our reputation if it hasn't already. Moving on now to page 5, another interesting area is, keep IEBC out of nominations, Raila and Mudavadi tell Uhuru. And this was a suggestion made by the president after he said, after the merger came through, that they were going to have IEBC oversee the nominations to ensure that they're free and fair. But of course, that was not taken very kindly by the opposition.
I think the issue is like they are looking at it as the government interfering into internal party matters. And I think it is over time. Our political party still has time to grow. It needs to grow to a level where you can actually even just get private firms to come and conduct some internal matters, audits, and even IBC when it comes there. But I think as we speak, people have no faith in the IBC, people have no faith. They would want to do things the way they want. We have seen people being given certificates, so that
it's questionable. Of course, their reputation right now is in question, which is why they are essentially going to leave office with time. I guess it was just a suggestion from the president that this could be done. But of course, according to Musalia Mudavadi, he says that that is a way of infiltrating into the IEBC and making sure that you have friends within, so that come 2017, you're able to influence certain things.
But also, these people opposing to the same, we have also seen how they have done their democracy within parties. Sometimes they are fearing because they already have predetermined people to vie in particular areas on particular things. So when you bring in IBC and they say the person who had the majority vote
Was this
one,
so?
so and so, and that's not what they want, then they go out. And then also these parties are actually owned. There are people who invest millions in these parties, and they feel so much entitled
To
have the
a stake in
and a
it.
stake
And well, it'll be interesting to see how the Jubilee Party is going to hold their nominations and how that's going to pan out. But that's a discussion we're going to have on State of the Nation to find out how possible that's going to be and whether that's going to be the test of their cohesiveness, so to speak.
I believe so.
It
That's
will be.
where their test will come from, nominations.
The nominations.
And if they conduct their nominations and there will be no defections by losers, that will be the party to watch.
All right. Page 11, state gives Mumias 830 million as a bailout, and we know Mumias has been, well, in a lot of trouble financially speaking, so 830 million coming out there to bail them out.
I think it's a good thing to bail out these firms, but it's another thing to look at the costs and hold some people culpable on what happened. So we find ourselves, we are slow on holding people culpable, but we are very quick
to bail them out.
We have also seen that with Uchumi.
Yeah, and of course that means that you've actually not dealt with the root cause of what may have brought them to their knees in the first place.
Exactly.
And also, and you know, that's one of the things that has been said, why corruption continues to be rife in Kenya, is because there seems to be nobody who does time for it.
Exactly.
Nobody's ever caught, accused
and
convicted.
Exactly.
Okay. Back page of the Nation. Mohammed defends Taiwanese expulsion, and the Foreign Affairs Minister has defended the deportation to China of the Taiwanese citizens charged with cyber fraud. This has been going on for a while.
Yes, and you see, when countries operate in such reciprocal arrangements, where when there is somebody suspected of a crime in this country, they are deported to be tried, extradition and such stuff. I think it also, because cyber and internet and ICT, they are something that's a global, and it affects the entire country. So I think it's something towards fighting cybercrime, and that's, I think,
it's a good step in the right direction.
Exactly.
All right, finally, let's look at the Star. The headlines are another, well, interesting issue here. IEBC limits spend by presidential aspirants to 5.2 billion. And that is basically putting a cap on how much can be used during election. Because one of the things that has been said is that when it's an open check, as it were, then, of course, a lot of money is splashed out. And it also becomes an unfair ground.
Exactly.
Because there's some who cannot afford.
That's very true. But this, when you look at this critically, the question that comes into your mind is enforcement. How do you enforce this, and how do you do an audit to make sure
it's only 5.2 billion.
It's only 5.2 billion. And there is even a higher thing. Once somebody is a leader in the political limelight, I think their accounts, their wealth and everything needs to be an issue of public. We need knowledge. We need to know how much does this guy have, how much has he received.
By law, really, they're meant to declare their wealth, but that, of course, has been elusive. Some have declared, others have not, so it still remains mysterious.
A mysterious thing. So it needs to go beyond that, I think.
Okay. Well, I guess that's where we're going to wind up our newspaper review this morning.
Thank you.
And do stay with us right here on Morning Express. When we come back, it's time for us to look at State of the Nation. And of course, there's been a lot that's been happening. We have the electoral body, the IEBC, and well, the merger, the Jubilee merger that's recently taken place, and whether that's going to hold the test of time. That's a discussion we're going to be having right here on Morning Express. So do stay with us. Don't go away.